utility that has been jump-starting many, many efforts. So, you know, we are very fortunate to have Andres here on stage today to deliver the very best of the experience he's been able to collect. And I'm sure he might disclose a couple of secrets to move ahead in all our own endeavors and projects. Please join me to welcome Andres Carvallo.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, how's everybody doing? You ready for your show? How many utilities in the room? Anybody? Utilities? A few. All right. How many vendors in the room? Okay. Press? Where's the press? All right, this is the most important question. Where are the electrical engineers? Raise your hand. Okay, keep your hands up. Everybody look at somebody who has a hand up. The electrical engineers are the smartest guys and ladies in the room. Okay? So with that said, as I was getting ready for today and flying over from Austin, Texas. Anybody been to Austin, Texas? A few? You know, we have Formula 1 there. If you love Formula 1 and you're from India, you can come. And I was looking at the numbers to compare United States, India, and China, and I was really just educating myself on sort of the challenges that these three large economies have, right? So I think, you know, we all know that the United States is a $18 trillion economy, that China is an $11 trillion economy, and that India is a $2.5 trillion economy. Interestingly enough, if you think of those numbers, 18, 11, 2.4, 2.5, when you look at how many barrels of oil each country imports. So the US imports 10 million barrels a day, China imports 8 million barrels a day, and India imports 5 million barrels a day. So that seems to be a bit disparity. And when I think about the challenges that we have with climate change and all the things that are happening with solar and wind and where do we go, think about this for a moment, right? Again, 18, 11, 2.5, and then the oil imports, 10 million, 8 million, 5 million. Then think about the population, right? The US has 330 million people. China and India are pretty close to each other with 1.3 billion. I'm rounding up. But when you look at power production, so we heard earlier that India has a capacity of 335 gigawatts, where the United States has 1,100 gigawatts capacity, and China has 1,500 gigawatt capacity. So clearly, there is room for growth if India were to climb the ladder as it's going above from the 7th largest economy to the 5th to the 3rd, its power output capacity, wherever it comes from, central generation, distributed generation, doesn't matter, needs to triple up. So India needs to go from 335 gigawatts to 1,000 gigawatts in the next 10, 20 years in order to become that number 3, number 4 economy in the planet. That is an incredible amount of growth when you think about it, right? And so, more importantly, if they do that, all that growth, and they continue to do electric vehicles, they continue to do normal gasoline vehicles, I think this is going to be a very difficult place to live because of pollution, right? So clearly, electric vehicles is the answer for them. So anyway, so before I get into all the things that I want to share, this is me. So you can see some logos to remember who I am and what I'm made out of. So I went to school in several universities to study engineering, business, quality management, and power engineering. And I worked in 4 industries that are kind of blending together, right? I worked in the software industry first, then I worked in the computer industry, then I worked in the telecom industry, and now I'm in the energy industry. And I run CMG, which is a consulting firm, and I'll tell you quickly about us. I also teach at Texas State University in the School of Electrical Engineering, a class called Building a Smart Grid, both on undergrad and graduate. And I was, as was said earlier by Richard, the former Chief Information Technology Officer at Austin Energy from 2003 to 2010, where we built everything that we're talking about. We had built it in that time frame. So in the journey of Austin Energy, I wrote a book that came out first in 2011, and the second edition came out in 2015. This is the second edition of the book. The book is for sale downstairs on the bookstore. There's a book stand next to OSI. This is a commercial for OSI now. So if you want to get your hands on the book and read about what Smart Grid 1.0, Smart Grid 2.0, or Smart Grid 3.0 is, this is your chance. Now, CMG, real quick, is a strategy company. These are the number of players and companies where we come from. And the success story of CMG is that we have amassed a knowledge library of 500 use cases of all the challenges of automating smart utilities, smart cities, and smart buildings. And we deliver that with 15 frameworks. And the frameworks range from smart city roadmaps to smart grid roadmaps to big data frameworks, so cloud frameworks, security frameworks, distributed energy microgrids, all of the above. So here's a picture of our customers. So many of these customers are historical, and obviously, we as a consulting firm, our customers are now, some customers, AT&T, Intel, and others have been around with us for more than 3 years, but usually, projects come and go quickly. So most of these customers are really historical customers. Current customers are about 12 of them. And our projects usually last anywhere from, 3 months to 6 months. That's it. So now that I've told you all that and you know who I am and what I do, what we're talking about, and we have heard all this morning incredibly well articulated, is a journey of digitalization, right? This journey is really a journey that has nothing to do with clean or dirty or fossil fuels or green tech. This is a journey that has to do with evolutions of systems. And the fact that we're moving from centralized, large-scale system design to solve problems of economies of scale to an architecture that is distributed but remains scalable to be even larger than the original large systems that we had created. We lived that in the computer world. We lived that in the telecom world. And now we are immersing ourselves in that transformation. Many of us are the actors of that in the roles that we play in the energy industry. And so if I can draw your attention to the graphs and you can see the eye chart a bit, the laptop that we all use, the equivalent of that in the telecom world is a smartphone. And the equivalent of that in the energy industry is the electric vehicle. So when you get an electric, how many of you have an electric vehicle? Anybody? So the electric vehicle, congratulations, the electric vehicle is the smartphone, laptop equivalent for the energy industry. Now, these are first version electric vehicles, and you're probably not powering your house with that electric vehicle today, but you will. Or you can power the camp house that you rent, or you can, even with 3 of you going to work, you can power the building that you're working in. So these electric vehicles will become this two-way power flow generation with energy storage devices that will change how we live. So this is what the transformation is about. This has been going on for some 30 years. It's not new. We're going to see why. But it takes a long time to change this industry. So there are many things impacting the industry. Many are internal and many are external. Here's a sort of a laundry list of things. There are some things that were mentioned earlier today as it relates to, what's really important now. None of these trends are the answer or the main influencer to all of you, depending on your geography, the size of your utility, or where you're at, right? But clearly there are some trends that are foundationally transformational because they're reaching some interesting economies of scale and cost. So things like renewable energy, solar and wind, or things like electric vehicles, or things like energy storage, right? Now there are some other things that are really important that we seem to not keep up with. I'm talking now to my brethren, the electrical engineers, and it's connectivity. When we talk about making all this work, all this needs to be connected. That means telecom. It needs to be connected in many ways and in different ways. And so we need to pay attention to telecom and all the flavors that are coming. And then the last thing that we need to pay attention is to software. And something that was said earlier today that was very right on point, that India is one of the superpowers in software in the world, right? Perhaps the largest factory of software in the world, period, right? And so when you think about the smart grid of the future made out of software, hardware, telecom, and power, that the software is the glue. So India should have an incredibly easy path to claim its rightful place as a superpower in the next 20 years if all things came to work perfectly. Because you have the building blocks to make this happen. What we need to do is pay attention how to do it and get some recipes to make it right. Like that good lunch that we had today. See, somebody worked very hard to make that lunch work. So let's talk about some of these trends. So renewable energy. So what's important about this, if you look at the graph at the top, right? It's kind of hard to see it, but there is clearly a downslope of cost on the cost of solar PVs and offshore wind over here, and solar PVs on my left, on your right. And so the costs have been going on forever, right? So wind started doing wind in 1985, not last week. So wind is new to you, been going on since 1985. If solar panels are new to you, it's been going on since 1976. It takes time for this transformation to take place, or the innovation, right? But right now, wind and solar are almost in the United States at parity with the cost of all the other generations. So clearly, globally, this is happening everywhere, right, at different phases. But the scales of the benefit of wind and solar are tremendous. So many people predict, this is our sort of official prediction slides. So when you look at the prediction of wind penetration, this is offshore wind, gigawatts installed in the world, the entire world. The prediction is that by 2040, the total installed base of wind will be almost 1,500 gigawatts globally. Similarly, in solar, gigawatts installed, panels and centralized both. It's predicted it could be, if you look at the dotted line use case, that by 2040, solar production could be almost 3,700 gigawatts worldwide. Now, if that much innovation and economies of scale with manufacturing is going on, if we are not taking advantage of that as our own country, we're missing the boat. Because the cost is going to continue to skyrocket to the bottom. So as I said to many friends, you've got to follow the money to do transformation and innovation. Because at the end, if I cannot afford it, if we can all not make money, why are we doing it? So take energy storage, for example. Clearly, energy storage is represented in many ways, fixed and mobile with cars, but cars are driving primarily the big volume of the innovation. Smaller size sales, packaging, replacements, warranty issues. They're learning faster. They're failing faster than any other scenario, right? So the learning is going at a faster pace on the electric vehicles. That's good. And according to all the forecasts, by 2022, between 2022 and 2026, the cost of energy storage will be at parity with all the other generation methods. Not very far from now. So that means, again, if you follow the money, that we need to be investing in energy storage today, because 2022 is like next week in utility time. Now, if those predictions come through, and the other prediction is that electric vehicles, as a percentage of the entire production of electric vehicles in the U.S. and the world, is going to be huge. So, for example, there are 265 million registered vehicles in the United States. There are 210 million vehicles registered in India. There are 172 million vehicles registered in China. Now, the annual sales of vehicles sold in each country is 70 million units per year in the US, 70 million units per year in India, and 24 million per year in China. So if we believe these numbers, if we're following the money, if I was a betting man, if I was prime minister for a day, if I was head of any utility for a day, and I was concerned about losing customers because of energy efficiency and response and all those other things, I would be betting my entire excess capacity of money on the fact that I want to make sure that everybody switches from gas vehicles to electric vehicles. And the reason it's going to happen is not because I wanted to, the utility or the power guy, it's because it's going to. All the cost trends, all the elements are telling you this is happening. And it's accelerating at the pace at which it's happening. Another important trend that is going to make all this fly, right? Remember I told you that the grid is really made out of software, computers, telecom, and power. It's IoT, right? So IoT is a bit of a dirty word for many in the SCADA control world. But I can tell you that if we design the networks right, and the networks are designed to be mission-critical networks, not Twitter networks, this architecture is the right architecture. So, for example, why not have networks that are shared among many utilities, gas, water, and power, that have the same SCADA problems? Right? Because what we're doing is we're moving from managing 3 billion things that are connected today in the globe to managing 300 billion things by 2040. And depending on which numbers you believe, that's about the range. It's anywhere from 100 billion to 300 billion things. So let's say it's a high-end case, it's 300 billion. Now, we only know how to manage 3 billion things. When you listen to the big carriers that do telephone, they manage 200 million and 100 million things. So we're on uncharted territory. We don't know, right? The engineers in the room can tell you, we don't know how to manage a 300 billion thing network. In fact, I don't think that we will ever will. What you will see is you will see hundreds and thousands of little networks that will emerge everywhere. Because it's not possible to manage a network that is 300 billion things connected by one carrier. So what you're going to see is you're going to see enough work to do for everybody, right? So somebody said earlier that the Y-Sun guys were in the room. Are the Y-Sun guys here? Just entered. Good timing. So we're going to have cellular networks wherever they're available, moving eventually to 5G. It's going to take another 5-10 years for 5G to manifest itself in anything important.
Mesh in the US, LoRa is a new standard in Europe, is kind of becoming global. Wi-Sun, we all know about, it's a new standard that is starting to, gain a lot of momentum.
Hopefully there will be deployments in the next 2 or 3 years. So this is a very important trend because again, if you're trying to, somebody said earlier, and I have to respectfully disagree, that we need to go from single networks from multiple networks to single networks. And the problem with that is security. In fact, I think it's the opposite. What we need to do is manage them together. So you need to decouple how you do network management and element management and all this stuff in telecom. And we need to make the visualization and the troubleshooting of those devices and where they are and what's wrong with them horizontal across all of them. But how they're actually being managed, activated, discovered, the software upgraded, patched, maintained, needs to be different physical networks. Because you can't really see it today where SCADA is going to be in the Twitter network, right? I don't believe that. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Another important trend impacting the industry is software, as I told you, but the most important one is big data. Now, there are many things about making big data work, right? You need cloud, you need mobile, you need, all these other things, including, we talked about blockchain earlier today, and blockchain is an important element, component of back office transactions. But big data is really where the bulk of the transformation of software will happen. It's this whole notion of how do we move from predictive analytics, algorithmic analytics, to really machine learning, cognitive, learning, right? And eventually into, this interesting word of artificial intelligence, which not a lot of people understand what it means today, given the computational power that we have. But clearly, this whole notion of going from predictive, that bubble right here, all the way to the end, cognitive, stochastic optimizations, so that where the machines start to learn patterns, right? Now, clearly, AI or machine learning or big data has been around for a while. We see it in commerce, we see it with Amazon, but it's going to start percolating and finding its way into our industry. And the best thing to use it for is just to optimize how we do things, right? It doesn't have to replace the control systems. It doesn't have to replace the software that is running your system, your ADMS or your SCADA or your EMS, but it can help how they do things. It can help predict planning things. It can help predict accidents, safety issues, right? So, now that we have kind of covered all that, as the slide said earlier, we're going to discuss really a deep dive, a fast dive on the digital utility of the future. So what is the digital utility of the future, right? So I call it a non-stop, on-demand, redesign journey. This is not a weekend thing. It's not a Y2K thing. It's not something that we finally get done with it in 24 months and it's over. No, this is a new lifestyle. This is like when you get married, everything changes. Or when you choose a new diet, everything changes. This is a lifestyle. You're going to get on the treadmill of becoming a digital utility. There's no going back. There's no taking a weekend off. There is none of that. It's either you're doing it or you're not doing it. So it's a non-stop, on-demand redesign journey of the business models, the business processes, the technologies, the organizational structures, which means governance, how you make decisions, how people come together to make decisions, and most importantly, but not least, they apply human capital to seamlessly leverage existing new trends into a more profitable, faster growing, and more customer-driven utility reality. So there are three things that digital utilities will deliver. They will deliver pervasive performance management, meaning streamlined processes by creating a digital, agile, and aligned utility. They will do close monitoring of performance. They will do flexible, integrated planning. So instead of just doing integrated resource planning from central generation, now you have to create a schema and a model in a way, in a process to integrate all those crazy people that are going to put solar panels and electric vehicles and move around as the edge grows, and be able to integrate that to your planning. Not monthly, not weekly, but hourly or every 50 minutes, whatever your wholesale trading system reliability cycle is. And then the last thing that they will do is they will provide insights into what to invest in and what to not invest anymore. So again, depending on the reality of where you are, you're in a coal country, you're in a renewable country, you're in a no power country, you need a better grid, you have no access to electric vehicles, whatever reality you're in, this new digital utility of the future and the way it manages itself should be evident, self-evident to you, the management team, on what you should be invested in not. So for example, as I told you earlier, if I was the head of any utility in the world, and I was having a problem with no growth, and my customer base was leaving, what would I be doing? I would be in creating the most exciting electric vehicle rebate program in the world, so that everybody that has a car in my service territory would want to switch from gas to electric, so that my top line would grow. Because to this day, after 30 years of work, I've never met a problem that a purchase order couldn't solve. Does anybody agree with that? I have never met a problem that a purchase order couldn't solve. Isn't that the truth? So work on the top line. Electric utilities should be all about electrifying the transportation sector. Shouldn't stop with cars, you should be doing boats, trains, planes, all of the above, helicopters. The more people need to plug and juice up from your grid, the better you are. It's the way I think about it. So that all means that we need to rethink the strategies and how we manage innovation as a competitive advantage. Not reacting because the regulators told us so, not reacting because we had an accident, not reacting because X, Y, and Z happened, but we are thinking continuously about how we turn all the signals of how we're managing our system and our ecosystem into a competitive advantage for the business. And if the business means that you're a public utility and you're good and your way of providing benefit is social good, well, then do more social good. That's good too. Now, how do you become the electric utility? Well, it's a journey, and it takes a long time. And if you can achieve this graph, which is part of the NIST work that Richard and I started doing a long time ago, we have to realize that the key thing that most utilities don't do as much as they should in this transformation is more planning. There's more planning that needs to be done. So when you're doing all these projects, you got to plan in advance. At least 15 to 20% of your time, of the total time of the project, should be dedicated to planning. If you're not planning enough, you probably will have not a very successful project. And as we heard before, there's a lot of challenge in integrating all these utilities and the systems that need to change. So this is an architecture that we recommend for our utility of the future. If you want to get your hands on that, you can spend time with me and we can help you figure out how to become this utility. There are roughly some 100 systems the utilities use, give or take, to run themselves. And so at the end, what you want to build is this utility design that enables at least a two-way power flow, two-way data flow. Many people today all suggested there was a multi-way power flow, multi-way data flow. I would just say, start with two-way. If you can build a two-way data flow, power flow utility, you're on your way, right? Now that means that as a utility, you need to also spend time dealing with your customers. And your customers as a utility are primarily buildings, right? And then factories, right? So, you know, if you think about the buildings that are commercial, right, these buildings of the future are going to change. Now, I heard today that maybe buildings were going to have some different profiles, and they were going to do different things, you know, around demand response, you know, and so on. And I would argue that the buildings of the future are going to be far more revolutionary than we think. You know, 40% of all the energy is consumed in the power sector is consumed by buildings worldwide. So why wouldn't the buildings of the future be actually power plants themselves, self-generating and exporting energy and leveraging the electric vehicles in the parking lot, right? Similar with the home. Why wouldn't the home be, you know, a self-generating home, right? It has all the technologies, you know, the electric car, the thermostat, the smart meter, energy storage, solar panels, and so on, right? And in the end, if you as a utility are doing this right and are driving transformation in your ecosystem of service territories, most utilities have hundreds of thousands of cities under them as service providers, then you get to play a role in designing the city of the future, right? Because energy happens to be one of the key things. So there are three main pillars. If you're doing, anybody doing a smart city project or thinking about one? Anybody? So there are three things you gotta get right. You gotta get right as a city, how you become digitalized and leverage your transformation in energy, water, and transportation. Those three things are the core of how the city becomes digital or smart. And so the utility, the water and the power utility, play a significant role in that transformation because they own one of those three or both of them. In some places, utilities are both water and power, or they're both, you know, electric and gas and so on, right? So again, this slide is, to me, the slide to learn and memorize because there are three things going on. On this axle here, vertical axle, we have the challenges in the transformation of the dynamic and bidirectional grid architecture utility that needs to be built. Things that go from smart meters are deployed and bidirectional DER can be achieved to things like customer analytics. But over time, we're going to get into machine-based adaptive algorithms. We're going to get to bidirectional EVs. We're going to get to real-time markets that are totally integrated, right? On the bottom, on the far right, we get the real-time customer engagement journey, right? So today, the most sophisticated thing that is happening is maybe dynamic pricing. And that's going to evolve into real-time pricing, customer grid communities, real-time customer portals, one-click bundling and switching, and ultimately energy device ecosystem management. This should be so easy, you know, plug and play. It's kind of like if it's not easy to install and deploy, it's not going to happen. And companies will emerge and take advantage of this. This is what Google and Apple and Amazon are trying to do in the home. They're trying to climb this ladder over here in the bottom, right? Now, in the middle is really where the money gets made in the glue of everything coming together. And this is, in my opinion, the responsibility of the utility of the future, right? That digital utility. It's called, you got to create a virtual grid architecture, right? That in the end delivers digital energy. Somebody talked about roaming of energy. You know, if I wanted to export the excess solar capacity in my solar system in Austin Energy to my cousin that lives in San Antonio, I should be able to do that and give it to him for free. And so that's one of the things that, you know, hopefully will happen, right? So this is the last slide. So here's the playbook. So the first thing you got to do is you got to know your customers better than you think you know them. You got to leverage where the customers live. They live in social networks. So you got to leverage that. Take advantage of that, right? You got to develop and grow your employees. Most of them are retiring. How many people in the utility are losing employees right and left? They're retiring every day, right? You got to build digital transportation roadmaps and KPIs to track success. You got to build new architectures and governance. You got to embrace, the cloud, big data, and blockchain. You got to plan for a lot of DER. You got to deliver projects quickly, and I mean in weeks, not months and years. You gotta automate everything possible, and you have to invest much more into security. If you think you're doing enough in security, I can tell you you're not doing enough in security. All right? Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Look forward to meeting you. I'm here for the next 3 days. Thank you for having me, Reggie, and thank you for everything, Richard. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Thank you.